And for more on this, we're joined by Amit Kumar. He's a research analyst at the Takshashila Institution's Geostrategy Programme. Welcome back to the programme. Now, how effective will these measures be in generating meaningful state revenue, or is this primarily a tool to deter further capital flight?
See, thank you so much for having me. But the way I see it is it's a wide and extensive tax collection effort to raise revenue. Now, if you remember in March this year, during the two sessions, the Chinese leadership, they said that they want to adopt a proactive fiscal policy and expansionary macroeconomic strategy, which would include both bolstering counter and cross-cyclical adjustments. But you need to also remember that this came against the backdrop of 11 consecutive quarters of deflation. So the question really was, where do the Chinese get the money from? Now, as you pointed out, the problem was that revenue as a percentage of GDP has itself dropped by a huge margin. So, for instance, in 2019, it was somewhere around 21%. It has come down to about 16.5%, and that itself is a larger reflection of dropping tax as a percentage of GDP, which the numbers are somewhere around the one that we used to see during 2000. So, China's tax to GDP collection is somewhere where it used to be right now is equal to what it was back in 2000, right? So that's a clear problem. And therefore, you saw the leadership acknowledge the seriousness of the issue and overall tax burden that has to be kept at appropriate level. And they pointed out that taxation policies and income generated from business operations, capitalist property, they need to be targeted. But as to your question as to whether this will have an impact or not, I think in isolation, not so much. But if it's a wider effort, you might see some changes, but it will still not be enough to make up for the shortfall that you now see in their annual budgetary reports. The economy will have to pick up for these changes to show up, right? These minor adjustments in economic on taxation policy and taxing the wealthier class would itself not make a big dent and would not make a big difference to the problem that the Chinese are facing right now.
Shares of major financial players like Prudential and HSBC took a severe hit on the news. So how heavily do these international insurers rely on mainland Chinese clients buying offshore policies? And could this permanently alter their cross-border business models?
See, I think since the economy has slowed down, we have seen these kind of reports surface a lot, people using these offshore measures. But the way I see it is the slower the economy gets, more these kind of, it would lead to a vicious cycle. More evasion, more underground routes, and then stringent policies by the Chinese leadership itself. So yeah, in that sense, it might now alter how you would see the cross-border transfers of money. They'll have to get innovative, and they'll have to find other ways, unless they want to pay a hefty amount to the Chinese leadership.
And with local government land sale revenues halving in the last 5 years, Beijing is clearly feeling the fiscal squeeze. Can improved tax enforcement on the ultra-wealthy actually plug the massive budget deficits left behind by the collapsing property market?
See, the thing with the local governments was that earlier they used to rely on land revenues to cover up for their taxation, the lack of tax that they would usually get from enterprises, and they would use land revenues to attract investments. But since the crackdown, that is not an option anymore at their disposal, and therefore what they have rather done is offer tax subsidies to enterprises to attract investments. So they have shifted to this model. And again, when you offer these scale of tax subsidies that the local governments today, lacking the size of the revenue pool that they had access to earlier, it has again made things difficult for the local government. So if you have these stricter policies in place, wherein even the tax subsidies that are provided by local governments, the Chinese local governments, is the central leadership comes after it, you would genuinely see some improvement on that front, because right now the local governments are providing huge subsidies to make up for the shortfall from the land sales revenue. So if those things are tightened, I think in isolation these policies might not work, but if you have a set of policies targeting different domains, yes, you might see a difference. But again, as I said, the larger problem is the slowing economy, and so long the economy itself doesn't recover, these minor adjustments would not mean much for the Chinese.
Amit Kumar from the Takshashila Institution, thank you very much for your insights.